Hello, everybody. Hello and welcome. We're so excited that you could join us today for Sourcebooks Kids and YA Fall Preview. Thank you. Thank you. We are really thrilled to have some wonderful books to share with you, and they're going to be talked about by their phenomenal creators. So thank you for joining us. My name is Kat Onder, and I'm the VP and publisher of children's books here at Sourcebooks. I've been here about 8 months. In my short time here, we've had a couple of exciting acquisitions. We've acquired the BES list, which is a wonderful group of titles, mainly focusing on the younger side and novelty formats. And then the Duo Press list, which is a phenomenal list that has tremendous vision behind it, led by Mauricio Velasquez de Leon, who you'll meet in just a little bit, and you'll hear more about that list. Our incredible agility here at Sourcebooks and our excitement for our authors and illustrators and their books have really helped lay the foundation for extraordinary growth. Currently, we are the #7 publisher of both juvenile fiction and YA fiction, according to BookScan data. And it's a really remarkable position to be in, considering the fact that Sourcebooks was founded just over 30 years ago in our CEO's apartment in the suburbs of Illinois. We are seeing growth across all channels, across all of our partners, from schools and libraries to the indie bookstores, to Barnes and Noble, to Walmart and Target and other mass market accounts, and also to all over the world, thanks in large part to our international team. And we really pride ourselves in being true partners with our customers and forming true partnerships with our readers. We're really thrilled to have this chance to showcase some of our biggest books coming in the fall with you in this preview. So thank you again for joining us. And before we get underway with our authors and illustrators, I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce you to our CEO and publisher, Dominique Raka. So as I mentioned just a minute ago, Dominique founded Sourcebooks from her home in 1987. And from those scrappy roots at her kitchen table, she has led Sourcebooks to tremendous heights, with scores of New York Times bestsellers and hundreds of national bestsellers across all categories and all age levels. Dominique is truly an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. She's achieved this success through her amazing vision, her leadership, her agility, her flexibility, and most of all, her partnership. She's been widely recognized as a leading innovator across publishing and has won every innovation award that the industry possibly gives, including being named Publishers Weekly Person of the Year in 2016. And now Dominique leads a veritable army, a small army of 150 book-loving Sourcebookers. And we are all, each and every one of us, guided by our mission that books change lives. And I would say, most importantly, to cap things off, that Dominique is an expansive reader. In the kids space, from the very youngest baby board books all the way up to sophisticated YA, I can tell you that Dominique absolutely devours books and is very, very passionate about connecting authors and illustrators to readers. The wide variety of authors that we publish and the authors and illustrators that are here today definitely reflect Dominique's book-loving spirit. And so, Dominique, I humbly pass the mic to you.
Kat, thank you so much for that intro. I don't know that I know what to say about it except thank you, and to welcome each and every one of you here with us today. So hello everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. And I can't tell you how excited I am for you to listen to these truly remarkable authors and their books. Before I say anything else, I want to take a moment to address something that I'm sure is affecting many of you right now, and that's the book banning that is happening across America. I'm sure we've all been affected by this. I know many of our authors have. I know that Proud Boys have come into our community and protested at our local libraries here in the Chicagoland suburbs. I know that there are adults who go into Anderson's Bookshop, our very own independent bookstore in our community, and try to remove books from diverse voices bookshelves. I know that our teachers, our librarians, our booksellers have all had to have extraordinarily uncomfortable conversations and experiences with a small but extreme group of people. It is indeed a really scary time right now, as Beth has put in the chat. I want to make it very clear that the entire Sourcebooks family believes that books change lives. We're founded because books change lives. And we believe that in order to change lives, you need to have representation. Readers need to see themselves reflected in books. Readers need to see their experiences reflected in books. And readers need to see experiences that are different from their own reflected in books. All of that needs to happen. Now, it's clear that there are a small number of loud people who don't want that. And it's our responsibility to continue to stand for readers and authors. It's our responsibility to help each other, to support each other, to remind each other that we are not alone, to remind each other that we're actually the majority. We're in this together. That extreme group, they want us to feel scared. They want us to feel bullied. But if we continue to stand on the side of what I believe we all know is the right side, the side of the need of our readers and of our global future, and I can't stress this enough, if we do it together, we will make an impact. We will change the narrative. One of the lights I see in this darkness is the incredibly moving and eloquent response that we have seen from our kids and our teenagers. In communities across this country, they are standing together and fighting. This gives me so much hope for our future. We're fighting for a better future for ourselves and for them. Sourcebooks has dedicated itself to a number of initiatives on this front, from working with the ALA on a book whose proceeds will go to organizations to help book banning, to sitting on boards at censorship organizations and adding our voice to the conversation. You're going to continue to see this kind of activity from us while we work to get towards supporting our authors, our staff, and our partners. We'd love to hear from you if you have any recommendations or suggestions on how we can continue to help. We're here today because books touched us. Stories touched us. They've entertained us. They've made us better. They made us better and more empathetic people. They've created incredible connections and memories for us. I know that this is a difficult time, but we're here today because books change lives. If there are any parents on this call, and I'm guessing that there are a few at least, or some, you'll probably recall that very first book that you shared with your little one, books that engage their growing minds, help them to learn about the world around them. I bet you can recall a picture book that your child wanted to read over and over and over every night. And to all the educators and booksellers out there, I'm sure there are picture books that kids are constantly checking out, or that you struggle to keep in stock because they touch the hearts of everyone who reads them. I bet you have extraordinary middle grade novels in your schools and libraries and stores, middle grade books that tell important stories, stories that you share with young people who come in looking for recommendations. And then there's that incredible breadth of YA, young adult, teen books, from fantasies inspired by different cultures to fractured fairy tales and page-turning thrillers. These are all the stories that are the beating heart of book publishing today. The authors and new partners you're going to meet today have incredible stories that touch on all of these points. I can't tell you how proud I am to be their publisher. I think of everyone who comes into our Sourcebooks publishing house as part of my family, and I'm so lucky that we've been able to create this community and these stories together. So thank you so much for joining us all today. And Kat, will you introduce our first author, please? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dominique. Really important message. I'm going to start by introducing you to Mauricio Velasquez de Leon, who is the editorial director and founder of Duo Press, which is a publishing company and is now a Sourcebooks imprint. Duo Press specializes in board books, middle grade books, books plus, something we called sidelines, like boxes and puzzles, and gifty adult books. Some of Duo Press's most successful titles and series include the High Contrast Tummy Time series, Babies Around the World, and the Terra Babies at Home board book series. Mauricio, it is such a pleasure to have you be part of the Sourcebooks team, and we are thrilled by your vision and your books, and we would love if you could please share more about Duo Press with the group here.
Sure. Thank you so much, Kat and Dominic. Well, I'm very happy to be here and have a chance to talk very briefly about Duo Press. I know everybody wants to hear the authors to talk, so I'll be brief. So I started Duo Press just like Dominic started Sourcebooks in her kitchen. I started Duo Press in my living room in Queens, New York. We named it Duo Press because we wanted to have. I named it Duo Press because I wanted to have a publishing company that would do well in the two markets that I like, which is the trade, which is bookstores and libraries and all that, and the gift market. So our books are supposed to be working very well on those things. However, as soon as I came up with that name, my wife announced to me and to herself that she was pregnant with twin boys. So we decided to keep the name as Duo Press because since that day, 16 years ago, everything comes in twos in my life. So we are very excited about that. And I'm also very, very excited to bring a different perspective to the American publishing industry. I was born in Mexico City, lived there for many years, come from a family from Spain. My grandfather was a journalist in Spain. My father's family is from Mexico. So that sort of like, in a way, gives me a different perspective in a very, very global publishing industry that I like to bring to the American audiences. And I think has been part of our success. Super happy to be part of Sourcebooks now. I admire Dominique since the first day I met her I mean, you can see the power of her words and the speech and the passion she has for books. And when I was starting my company, I saw her speaking, and it really changed the way I saw the publishing business. So I'm very, very happy and very proud to be part of Sourcebooks now, and Duo Press will continue to publish incredible books. Very quickly, I'm going to show you what Kat was just mentioning. We're well known for our board books like the High Contrast books or the Tummy Time books. This new series of my first book of houseplants, Terra Babies, and this kind of high quality board books. But in relationship with what Dominic was saying about representation and fighting for social justice and all the things, we're very proud to have one of our new books, which is the Young Activist Dictionary of Social Justice. It's you can see in the Edelweiss catalog that was put in the chat, some of the interior pages. We think this is an important resource for kids who are participating in the social justice movements all over the country and all over the world. And I think it's just a little bit of our mission and to try to get people to understand this kind of social issues and fighting for what's right. So we are very happy to be publishing this. Is a new one, and in that same area, I want to just highlight one of our most favorite books, in my opinion, is the best book we ever published. Think for Yourself. It's a ultimate guide to critical thinking. This is a book. This is an important book to show kids how to separate what they hear and see in TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and all those places, and even in the media outlets, in cable and even newspapers. to separate what's real from what's not real, what's fake news from not fake news, what's really fake news for really not fake news, and how to think critically, which I think is a super important part of the development for kids. And if we don't want to be talking about banned books in 20 years from now, we should be starting to think critically now. And this is a very nice resource for young readers to start learning about those issues. So this is a little bit of what we have. And as Kat said, we also have puzzles and flashcards and decks of cards and all the kind of fun stuff. So we try to mix our program with serious issues like the ones we just discussed in a very accessible way, with just like fun stuff, because if you're gonna fall in love with reading, you have to have fun with the book. So that's what we do, and that's what we try to do. So thank you, and I think I pass the mic to Kat again.
Back to me. Thank you so much, Mauricio. It truly has been a pleasure getting to know you these past few months, and your books are wonderful, and we're looking forward to many, many more to come. Okay, so next I'm going to take you on a little journey to Wales to meet the author-illustrator duo behind Blue Baboon Finds Her Tune. Helen Doherty's award-winning books for children have been translated into 27 languages, and many of her rhyming picture books like The Snatch-a-Book, The Storybook Night, and Pirate Nell's Tale to Tell are illustrated by her husband, Thomas Doherty. Helen and Thomas live in Wales with their 2 daughters, and she used to teach languages, speak Spanish, French, Welsh, and also a little Swedish. Thomas's illustrations have won numerous awards, and his work is published all over the world. While he's not illustrating, Thomas loves helping children and young adults tell their own stories using words and pictures. Welcome, Helen and Thomas, and will you please tell us about Blue Baboon Finds Her Tune?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kat. We're just so excited to be here today, and I want to say thank you so much for including us. So I'm Helen Doherty.
And I'm Thomas Doherty.
And here we are in our studio in Swansea in Wales, which is where we live and work. And we're really excited to share our new book with you today, Blue Baboon Finds Her Tune. So Swansea is a city on the coast, and we have this wonderful view. Unfortunately, it's from the other side of the house, but we do have this wonderful view all over Swansea Bay from our house. And as you can see in this beautiful photograph here, at the end of every summer, we get to see the harvest moon rising over the bay, enormous and orange in the darkening blue sky. And it was one day around that time of year that the phrase "orange moon, blue baboon" popped into my head. And I started to develop the text from this simple rhyme, challenging myself to write the whole story in monorhyme. So every 3rd syllable had to rhyme with moon or baboon. And those of you who are familiar with my other books, such as The Snatch-a-Book, The Storybook Night, or Pirate Nell's Tale to Tell, you'll know that I love writing in rhyme. But I'd never actually written in monorhyme before, so this was totally new territory for me, a new challenge. So of course, as well as following this very strict rhyming scheme, the story had to have a proper narrative arc to it, as well as an emotional heart. And at the beginning of the story, Blue Baboon is delighted to find a bassoon. But when she starts to play it, unfortunately, she plays out of tune, and she ends up annoying all the other animals. So feeling disheartened, she takes a ride away from the city in a hot air balloon. And then she ends up landing on a distant dune where she plays the bassoon all on her own. But then she discovers that she's not the only one whose music is out of tune. And the book, without giving too much away, the book ends on a celebratory note, quite literally. So when I was a child, my head was always stuck in a book, and it took me a while to discover there's other kids who also felt maybe a bit out of tune with the others. The ones who I felt at home with and who loved me and accepted me for exactly who I was, just as I loved them. So I can really relate to the character of Blue Baboon in my story. And it's a story all about friendship, about acceptance and self-acceptance, about how it's okay to be different, and about finding your own tune. But it's also a magical nighttime adventure with this cast of adorable, quirky characters, which Thomas has created. And in fact, he created many secondary characters that weren't even there when I originally wrote the story. And we just had so much fun, didn't we, discussing the whole world in which the story would take place.
We did. It was, I mean, I love working on Helen's stories and building the world around her words. And in this story, in Orange Moon, Blue Baboon, the story is so tied to the rhyme that actually it left an awful lot of space to fill the book with my own visual narrative. We talked a lot about, where the story might be set, and to begin with, we thought about maybe setting it in the jungle. It seemed sort of obvious place to start with a baboon. But I sort of slowly wondered whether actually maybe we could do something a bit more contemporary with it and set it in a city, maybe in a city park. And that's what we ended up deciding to do. I really hope that setting it in an urban environment would make the characters and the setting maybe more relatable to a lot of children who are reading the story. And also maybe the fact of setting in the park helped find a place for things like the bassoon and the balloon that come along in the story. As one of the big challenges was to make a sort of believable visual narrative around the very, very sort of sparse words. So that the city gave that sort of that sort of place where magical things could happen, and in a very sort of plausible way. And that led me on to the creation of the musicians in the story. Now the great fun thing about the musicians is they're not in the text. And so there's no words written about them, but they're fundamental to the way that the story develops. And that, in fact, is one of the nicest things about being an illustrator, by taking the words and then developing a whole world around and beyond the words themselves. And in fact, Orange Moon, Blue Baboon is full of lots of incidental details that you can look out for and which kids can enjoy finding. You can spot the ducks that have their own little story going on throughout the pages, and there's a couple of cats, and they've got a heart-shaped balloon that follows Blue Baboon's own journey through the narrative, and there's some dancing crabs at the end.
So lots of different things to look out for.
Lots of things to look out for. I always really like to try and put some of my own first-hand experiences and into my stories as well. That's fun, putting your own life into your pictures. And when we started sort of creating this story together, we got a puppy. And the puppy turned into the sort of inspiration for the dog musician that's playing the saxophone. We haven't managed to teach our dog to play the saxophone yet. But,
sadly, not yet.
We're working on it. Yeah. We just about got to come back. But then there's loads of other things. I mean, the park at night. We went on an amazing holiday all together as a family, and one evening we went to a very special park in the center of Hamburg in the evening in Germany, and they have this incredible sort of illuminated light display with fountains in the middle of the park
and music. Yeah,
and it was so magical seeing, because we'd been in the park with the kids earlier in the day, but it was a different place at night with all the beautiful silhouettes of the trees and the really vibrant colors, and that definitely fed directly into the pictures that I was creating. And I wanted to get that sort of luminous, magical sort of feeling of otherness. So I've hoped that sort of fed those sort of experiences into the book.
And just the excitement of being in a park at night, which I think any kid who's been in a park in the evening, especially a park with those sort of colours, it's a wonderful, magical experience, isn't it?
Yes, and there's another little creature. There's a tiny little owl that only appears on a couple of pages. When I was growing up, I lived in the countryside, and there was a field across from our back garden that had an owl living in the tree. We didn't see it very often, but you could hear it at night. So even things like that, come back to you, and you can sort of feed them into your work. Sadly, I've never been in a hot air balloon, but
not yet.
Not yet. Yes, there's still time. But I have flown over a city at night, and that is a very magical experience. And I can imagine what being up in an air balloon might feel like. And so again, it's trying to feed that sort of those magical experiences back into the illustrations and into the story. As for Blue Baboon, well, she was quite a difficult character to create. I'd never done a baboon before. So she started off looking a bit older, and she we tried to make her more childlike, more sort of curious as the rough sort of went on. Green Baboon, on the other hand, he seemed to be a bit easier. And there's definitely a little bit of a nod to Elvis in there, maybe in his sort of more like in the Las Vegas days of his life. So, well, I just hope that everybody who reads this book, young and old, enjoy all the details that I've put in there, and that they find something to make them laugh and to smile.
Yeah, we just hope everyone really relates to and enjoys this book and has as much fun reading it as we had creating it.
Definitely.
We just want to say thank you again for giving us the opportunity and for publishing our book, and we're very excited to see it come out.
And for finding a home for Blue Baboon.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Helen and Thomas. It's a wonderful book, masterful rhyme, gorgeous illustrations, and we're thrilled to publish it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to age us up all just a little bit and move us into middle grade with Alda P. Dobbs. Alda is as passionate about connecting children to their past and their communities and nature as she is about writing. Alda lives with her husband and 2 children outside of Houston, Texas, and she is the author of Barefoot Dreams of Petraluna, which is a 2022 Pura Belpré Honor Book and Texas Bluebonnet nominee. Alda, welcome, and will you tell us about The Other Side of the River?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for having me here. I wrote The Other Side of the River, comes out this September. Really excited about it because it's a follow-up to Barefoot Dreams of Petraluna. And both books are inspired by my great-grandmother who endured the Mexican Revolution back in 1913. And Barefoot Dreams is all about her experience in Mexico. She's trying to flee the Federales, crossing the desert, trying to get to America. And The Other Side of the River follows Petraluna to the other side, to Eagle Pass, Texas. And Petraluna's story was inspired. It all started with my great-grandmother's story telling me about her time during the Mexican Revolution and the time at the refugee camp where she lived in Texas. So I like the fact that this book starts out at the refugee camp. And it's something that I learned from her, and there are details that I learned from the research as well. Something that I learned in the research was that after about 4 or 5 weeks that they'd been in the camp, U.S. Immigration came up to them and said, all right, you're now free to go either back to Mexico because the Federales are no longer a threat, or you can stay in America and we'll help you find jobs, housing. And at that point, my great-grandmother was the oldest sibling. So she and her father talked it over and they decided to go back to Mexico because the Federales had already retreated from the border. So they went back to Mexico, but they found everything destroyed. Fields, farming fields were burned to the ground. Entire villages were destroyed. And she said it was really tough to get started again. And in my research, I found out that a lot of these refugees ended up in the States. They actually made America their permanent home. So in my mind, I always wondered what it would have been like had my great-grandmother decided to stay in the United States. And that's why I decided to put Petraluna in San Antonio. And San Antonio is one of my favorite cities in the world. And I live there, I grew up there, so I'm a little biased. But I wanted to put Petraluna in San Antonio because 30,000 refugees ended up in San Antonio, Texas. And this is a city that back then had only 100,000 people. So when your population increases by 30%, it changes the entire city. There's limited resources for the refugees, limited work, limited housing. And I wanted to put 12-year-old Petraluna in that situation, trying to fight again for her family and for her dream of learning how to read and write. It still hasn't become a reality. So she's still struggling to fulfill that dream and take care of her family. And something else too that I learned too were the parallels, in the stories and the histories of what's going on now and what happened in the past. For instance, one of them was when my great-grandmother crossed the border from Mexico. She and 7,000 people literally ran for their lives because the Federales were after them. So they ran across that bridge to get to the other side. And as soon as they crossed into Eagle Pass, Texas, people were scared. The local people in Eagle Pass were afraid of an outbreak because smallpox was going on during that time. So immediately they said, okay, send those refugees back because we're afraid of an outbreak. And the US Army refused. They said, no, we send them back. We're sending them back to their death because the federales are there. They're ready to slaughter them if we send them back. So how about we put them in a parade field, we quarantine the ones that are sick, vaccinate everybody, but we'll keep it under control. And luckily for my great grandmother, they did that. They didn't send them back. Otherwise, it would have been a different history. But it's interesting to see those parallels that you see the smallpox scares, the refugee crisis, and you see that now with COVID. And still, we have that same crisis in our borders. And also just the parallels of refugees, of children refugees, orphan children trying to make it across borders. You see that in Ukraine right now as well, with kids, taking siblings across borders, walking into the unknown, just seeking for safety, just like Petroluna did. And something I also did for Petra and the other side of the river was I gave her a mentor. I gave her an Irish nun as a mentor, and the Irish nun brings her backstory from having escaped the Irish famine. And I wanted for young readers to see those parallels and stories of people being forced to leave their countries or homeland, struggling to get to America. And even after they reach America, it's still a struggle to survive in this country. And I want young readers to realize just things we take for granted about our ancestors, having had that struggle, even though they had reached America. And to realize that the story, Petra's story is not unique to Petra or to Mexicans. It's a universal story that transcends times and cultures. And something that I found interesting too in my research was that, like I mentioned before, I grew up in San Antonio, Texas. And I myself was an immigrant. So a lot of it, I put those experiences that I had, the struggle to learn the language, the culture shock, I put that in the book through Petroluna. And the elementary school I attended, its name is W.J. Knox. And going to that school, I remember this old vintage picture that sat in the hallway of this gentleman. You could see the black and white picture, but his eyes and just the gentle look he had in his eyes and this charisma that came through that photograph. And I always wondered who he was. Nobody could tell me who he was. I knew my school was named after him, but for the longest time, I went through from kinder to fifth grade, got out of that school and often thought about that photograph of who he was. And it wasn't until I started to research for this book that when I dove into trying to find out what it was like to be a refugee in San Antonio back in 1913, I found out there was this gentleman who was striving to make it better for these refugee children. He was building schools, trying to teach them English, trying to teach them a skill so they could better themselves. And he went as far as to use his own money to buy supplies and books for these immigrant children. And there's a lot he did for the community. And it turns out it was him. My school was named after him. So to be able to find out about him through my research, and then I put him in a book to interact with my character, it's just a testament to his vision of, I think it just comes into a full circle. And I really, really appreciate that, of that gift of finding little tidbits in history and how it all comes in circle and ties in to your own story. So I want to thank the librarians and the booksellers, because with Barefoot Dreams of Petroluna, it's amazing the work they did in connecting me to readers. I appreciate all the work. The Twig was phenomenal in having me reach people in San Antonio, Texas. You have the Bookworm and Cavalier Books. They were wonderful as well, connecting me with readers, and to the point that readers really connected with Petroluna, and we're looking forward to finding out, did she learn how to read? Did her dad come back into her life or not? So, anxious to reconnect with all those readers again through this book here. And also the librarians, especially in my state of Texas, with the Blue Bonnet nomination for Barefoot Dreams. Now, again, I have another group of readers in my state, and especially, because the book takes place in Texas. So that makes the bond even stronger there with the with the kids that want to learn what happened to Bridger and what it was like for especially a lot of Mexican American kids that could trace their ancestry back to this era that came during that time that didn't know about. A lot of grandparents, that history was never passed on, but now they're learning it through books like this. So thank you, Sourcebooks, for the opportunity to share this story, this family story, and make the connection. So thank you so much.
Alda, thank you so much. It is such a powerful story, and I really appreciate hearing all of the historical context. It just adds such a rich layer to it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we are going to change gears a little bit and age up again into YA, and we're going to take a quick trip over to India with Tanvi Berwa. So Tanvi is a South Asian writer who grew up wanting to touch the stars and reach back in time. She graduated from the University of Delhi with a bachelor's and master's in literature of English and lives in India. And Monsters Born and Made, this gorgeous book you see before you, is her debut novel.
Okay, hi everyone, I'm Tanvi and I wrote Monsters Born and Made. Yay! It's a post-apocalyptic fantasy set in a terrible oceanic world where you have extreme climate and there are vicious sea beasts in the oceans that are always ready to hunt humanity. And our story follows Coral, who is a hunter and captures these sea creatures, Mary stags, which I made up for the story, by the way. And she captures them for this deadly chariot race tournament. And when her family finances take a turn for the worse, she's forced to cheat her way into this very same tournament, except this tournament is reserved only for the upper caste, and it causes a lot of problems for her. So basically, this book is in conversation with all these dystopian books that have come before, especially the Hunger Games, because when the books first came out back in 2008, I was in high school and I have been a fan ever since. And this story basically takes this idea of, when basically it's like the idea of comfort in an increasingly terrifying world only exists if we have the existence of inequality. And I have taken this idea and applied a very unique South Asian perspective, which is the caste system, which is still prevalent in India. It's a violent social injustice. And it's also very difficult to explore and explain because, like, you cannot look at a person and tell what their social caste is. Like, we can do that with poverty signifiers. We can, of course, do that with the color of our skin. But caste it's just so ingrained. It's just so devastatingly inhuman. And, it's important that we talk about this because, otherwise there's this whole worldwide perspective that we are cut off from. And basically, sorry, I'm just like all over the place. What I'm trying to say is that basically what Dominique said before, that we can and we have to overcome the narrative, and the only way to do that is to widen our worldwide perspective, to move forward as a united human community. And for me, someone who learned to speak English via booksellers and librarians who were always so super nice, super gracious with stuff that I would enjoy, I know that books are capable of, especially children's literature, is capable of doing so much more. So, having an idea like this combined with something that people would enjoy is, like, personally very important to me. And on a lighter note, I'm a lover of the sea, and writing this book was a chance to basically delve into my bizarre fascination with sea life and all this research I went into and the way sea life evolves in the deep, dark ocean. In fact, we will have a map in the book, and I can show you, I can show you a little bit of the Mary stag, which is basically a velociraptor mixed with a stag's head. And I really hope that readers of Hunger Games, Red Queen, Bone Season, Iron Widow, and all these books will find a continuing legacy of such stories and monsters. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tanvi. Really, really great to hear about the book, and I know everyone is really excited to read it. Thank you. Okay, so everyone on the call, we have been taking quite a journey together. So far, in case you're curious, we've been to Baltimore, Texas, Wales, and India, and now we are going to head to Brazil with Laura Pohl. So Laura is a Brazilian writer who lives in Sao Paulo. She likes writing messages in caps lock, quoting Hamilton, and obsessing about Star Wars. And when not taking pictures of her dog, she can be found curled up playing video games. The Last Eight, a book of hers, won the International Latino Book Awards, and The Grimrose Girls, which was her third book, was a New York Times bestseller. You can visit Laura online at onlybylaura.com. Laura, will you tell us more about your upcoming novel, The Wicked Remain?
I'd love to. Hi, everyone. I'm Laura. As Kat presented, I'm the author of The Grimrose Girls, which you might remember as this book, and the upcoming The Wicked Remain, which is the sequel. I just love how both of them look together. They are incredible. I'm in love with the cover ever since it arrived on my inbox. So I'm so grateful for the Sourcebook team for taking care of it so well. So I'm so excited to be here and talk to you all today. Libraries especially were so important to me because as Kat said, and like Tanvi, I relied so much on libraries to actually start learning English. And when I moved to Australia at 13, I wasn't I didn't speak English very well. I just knew the basics. I could spell my name and knew my favorite color. So that was a really hard journey, and libraries helped me so much because I just read everything in the middle grade and YA section that I'd already read in my own native language. And so it was so good to revisit the stories in the original, and just it helped me so much in my journey to actually be here and be a writer today, writing in English, which still feels a little wild today. So The Wicked Remain follows, it's a direct sequel to The Grimrose Girls. It follows 4 girls who are haunted by a fairy tale curse in their Switzerland boarding school. It's a very exclusive boarding school, and I always felt drawn to the idea of like a magical setting in Europe, you know, with like big fairy tale castles and snow everywhere, obviously, because we do not have fairy tale castles or snow in Brazil. So that was always interesting to me. Like when I imagined fairy tales, it was always very distant. And writing Grimrose Girls, I just wanted to bring myself closer as well to the fairy tales that I love so much. So it's a direct sequel, and I continue to do like 4 different fairy tales retellings in this. It is like interwoven between Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Beauty and the Beast, and Snow White. These are the 4 main ones, and we finally see like the conclusion and how all of these retellings come together, which I'm very excited about to everyone see the parallels that I've made to try and modernize the tales for everyone and the YA audience. So I've always been fascinated. The thing about writing this book is that I've always been fascinated, especially with the more grim side of fairy tales, pardon the pun. It is, for me, it was always so weird how there are like the children's version of the story, which are always very like a little bit lighter, but I always, my fairy tale as a kid favorite was Bluebeard, which is very macabre, but I just loved it. My mom was like, what is wrong with this kid? But for me, it was always very interesting to explore how much darkness there is also in each of us. And that doesn't mean like to be angry and to be sad, and all those things are very normal for teenage girls, and we don't usually allow them to feel that much because teenage girls are always holding out society's expectation that they should be always kind, that they should be always nice. And it is being a teenager is kind of like horrible when you think about it, because you have hormones all over the place. You have no idea who you actually are. You are just growing out of being a kid and starting to realize what it's like to be in the adult world. And it is very hard to reconcile all these feelings. So this is a thing that I definitely wanted to explore. in the book, as well as how important friendships actually are for young girls and everyone in their high school experience. Like, you don't survive high school alone. That is a very, very hard experience. So for me, it was always important. And also because I read so much for YA, I've always been in love with YA as fantasy especially, but so much of it focuses on romance instead of a friendship and family. And that was a thing that I always felt like it was missing for me, because for me, before romance, before everything else, were always my friends. They were the most important part of my life when growing up. They were the people I told everything about. If I had a fight with my family, if I had any troubles, like romantic troubles, that's who I'd go for advice and for support. So when I started writing these books, I wanted to center friendships first of all. So obviously there are romances. There are four main characters, so some of them have romantic plot lines, but mostly it is about the connection between these four girls and how important their friendships are to each other. And the sequel, the first one kind of like works as a murder mystery as well, but the sequel is especially more fantasy rather than mystery. So it's a lot more like Once Upon a Time, and it's very good for readers of MG who are aging out of Descendants or School for Good and Evil, which will have an upcoming movie. So if you have like kids and teens interested in reading more about fairy tales, this is a pretty perfect read. And I think that's it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Laura. I love hearing about the interweaving of those many fairy tales and the importance of friendship in those teenage years, which, as you are absolutely right, can be very challenging. Really excited to be publishing this one. Thank you so much. Okay, we are now going to end our author talks in Kentucky with David Bell. David is a USA Today bestselling and award-winning author whose work has been translated into multiple foreign languages. He is currently a professor of English at Western Kentucky University in Bowling Green, Kentucky. And She's Gone is his YA debut, and we are delighted to welcome you to the YA space, and so happy that you are here to talk with us today. David, will you tell us about She's Gone?
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks to everyone at Sourcebooks, Dominique and Kat, and my editor, Steve Geck. It's just been a great experience so far. I'll just tell you real quick about the book. The cover is amazing. I'll just say that first of all. People always say, did you have anything to do with the cover? I had nothing to do with the cover, but it is an amazing cover. So I'm really grateful for that. And She's Gone is a suspense novel, and it tells the story of Hunter Gifford. He is a senior in high school. He's 17 years old. And when the book opens, Hunter wakes up in the hospital, and he is told that he and his girlfriend, Chloe, were in a one-car accident on a remote country road on the night of their homecoming dance. There are two big problems. One is that Hunter has absolutely no memory of the accident or even of the dance. And two, that Chloe has disappeared from the scene of the accident without a trace, and no one knows where she's gone. Naturally, the person who everybody thinks was the last person to see Chloe alive is the one who becomes the number one suspect, and that's Hunter. As we all know, it's always the boyfriend when something like this happens. So maybe he can't prove his innocence because something happened that he can't remember. The only people who really stand by Hunter throughout the course of the book are his father. Hunter's mother died before the book began. His father, his younger sister, Olivia, and his sister Olivia's girlfriend, Gabriella. They are the ones who band together to help Hunter try to prove his innocence and find out what happened to Chloe. Now, I'll say up front, I I drew on some of my own experiences in high school when I wrote this book. I'll say up front, I was not accused of murder, so don't jump to that conclusion. But when I was growing up, I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is a big city. My family did not have a lot of money. And when it was time for me to go to high school, I was really fortunate that I was able to get a scholarship, a need scholarship and an academic scholarship to a private school that was way on the other side of town. And I had to ride a city bus 30 or 40 minutes across town every day. And I might as well have been on Jupiter when I went into this school. I hardly knew anybody. I thought everybody was looking at me like I was from another world, and I didn't feel like I fit in this rich kid's school. And I drew on some of those feelings of alienation and isolation when I was creating Hunter, when he feels like the whole town has turned against him. And I think those feelings of isolation and loneliness are pretty common to young people, but I drew on those experiences and put them into the book. I've really been inspired by some really great YA suspense novels that have come out recently, like We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. Those suspense novels where you don't quite know what's happening and everybody is a suspect at some point, and maybe the main character is the suspect. So those are some books that I think are comparable in a way to mine. And also, even though the book is a suspense novel, I do think of it also as a love story. The whole motivation for Hunter in the book is his love for Chloe and trying to find out what happened to her. And so a book like Me and Earl and the Dying Girl by Jesse Andrews is also similar, where you've got young people dealing with these big, heavy things, and the romance element as well. So I think those were good comparisons to these books. Like Kat said, I've had other books come out, and one of the things that I've learned with my other books coming out is that when I go to do events, the best people to get the book into the hands of readers are people who work in bookstores and librarians. The book isn't complete until the reader gets their hands on it. And the booksellers and the librarians who live in their community and know their readers, and when someone walks into the bookstore or the library, they can take the book right to the person and say, hey, you should try this one. I think you'll like it. You know, they go beyond the bestseller list. They find the hidden gem and they put it in the hands of the readers. No book can find readers without those people. So I've been very grateful in the past for that help, and I look forward to that continued help with She's Gone. When I was a kid and growing up, the one thing my parents did is they always took me to the library and they always took me to the bookstore. It was every week we were in the library or the bookstore, and that turned me into a reader, which has turned me into a writer. And now the fact that I'm writing books and working with booksellers and librarians in this way is just a dream come true. So I'm really excited for everybody to read She's Gone. It comes out on November 1st. And I'm really excited to be working with Sourcebooks. And I'm really proud to be part of this great constellation of authors who are all very impressive. And I want to read everybody's books. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, David. Definitely a page turner. And thank you to all of our authors from literally across the world today. I think that everyone's to be read pile just got a little bit bigger, and we're all extremely excited about your books. And we are thrilled that we had this opportunity to share them with you, the audience. So now I think as a next step, please do go out and check out Edelweiss or NetGalley and download the books, read them, and I hope that you'll fall in love with them just the same way that we have here at Sourcebooks. Thank you, everyone, for your time today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.